Officially known as the Commonwealth of Puerto Rico, Puerto Rico is a United States territory that is located in the Caribbean. The Puerto Rican archipelago has a very diverse geography with a vast coastline, the El Yunque National Rainforest, and mountainous terrain. Politically and economically, Puerto Rico abides by U.S. laws, pays the majority of U.S. taxes excluding the federal income tax, has its own governor, and a non-voting member of Congress. Its two official languages are Spanish and English, and Spanish is the official language spoken most frequently, fostering a very unique nationalistic culture that is traditionally separated from the United States. Today, Puerto Rico is modern, industrialized, and is a haven for tourism. But Puerto Rico has faced a harsh past of colonization and imperial influence. In 1493, Christopher Columbus claimed Puerto Rico for Spain, filling the island with Spanish settlers who wiped out the indigenous Taino Indian population with the diseases that they brought with them. Spain established San Juan as its capital in the early 1500s and then brought slaves to the island in the late 16th century. Puerto Rico lost its control from the Spanish crown when the United States then invaded Puerto Rico and established control in 1898 during the height of the Spanish-American War. The Spanish-American War was a result of U.S. intervention in Cuba's War of Independence against Spain. When the U.S. intervened, they pitched a war against Spain as well. Under U.S. influences, Puerto Rico experienced great development and growth, but quickly grew tired of such strict, systemic colonial rule. In fact, during a congressional hearing in 1954, Puerto Rican nationalists staged an armed attack to bring attention to disparities against the nation. In conjunction with this attack, gangs conducted protests, acts of violence, and other forms of hate against American values well into the 1970s and 80s. A series of bombings were attributed to the pro-independence group, Los Macheteros. Los Macheteros leaders were assassinated by FBI agents in 2005. In the past decade, violence has curtailed against the government, but Puerto Rican officials are striving to pass policies that will lead to statehood. In a 2012 non-binding referendum, 61% of voters were in favor of statehood. President Obama announced after the referendum that he will strive to honor the Puerto Rican citizens' wishes, but this will require another long road ahead. In terms of immigration, hundreds of thousands have migrated to the United States, particularly to large cities such as New York. The United States still has a large influence on Puerto Rican policies both politically and economically, but has scaled down military presence at a drastic rate. For centuries, Puerto Rico has been deeply under the influence of U.S. policies due to the U.S.'s interventionist agendas and its woven ties to the aftermath of the colonialist era. Puerto Rico has been hindered in its ability to grow and prosper as a sovereign nation due to U.S. imperial interests, and therefore has been forced to remain reliant on the U.S. for sources of trade, economic growth, and the development of infrastructure. A largely prevalent problem that has delayed economic growth in the 21st century is the debt crisis. Puerto Rico has been drowning in their outdated fiscal policies to the point where they have accumulated over $70 billion in debt that they owe mostly to the United States. As a United States Commonwealth, Puerto Rico has been tied to U.S. policies on both a foreign and domestic level due to the geopolitical concept known as suzerainty. This concept affirms the island's ties to the U.S., but does not allow it to receive U.S. benefits like the states do, including substantive health care. The massive debt crisis has driven the nation into a sense of havoc domestically, causing thousands of nationals to flee the island or suffer from hunger, among related problems. Within the past few years, Puerto Rico's governor, Alejandro Garcia Padilla, has been striving to arrive at agreements with U.S. leaders that will allow the island to declare bankruptcy in order to seek international assistance and even possibly be able to forgive a portion of their debt so the governor can address the immediate issues of poor education, healthcare, and resource distribution. A new proposal has recently been released by Congress in order to further intervene and help stop the continuation of the displacement of people. As greater numbers of people leave, less are there to work and rebuild domestic commerce. A large part of their plan of regrowth includes the reformation of the Commonwealth's Medicaid program in order to close the gap of significant health disparities between American citizens and Puerto Rican nationals. The last integral step of regrowth includes providing them with access to the Earned Tax Income Credit, which they were previously excluded from. This credit supplements workers' wages and support for their work and contributions to the economy. Large corporations are also afraid that an agreement such as this one would harm corporate assets that have been invested in Puerto Rico over time. Many of these private investments come from hedge funds, and their large portfolios allow them to assist in helping the island's immediate needs, but require that 20% be paid back to the hedge funds over time, solely advancing their own economic interests, the corporations, and creating more problems for Puerto Rico in the future. The majority of the Puerto Rican island is Roman Catholic. Smaller sects include Judaism, Baptists, Episcopalians, Lutherans, and Presbyterians. Religion is very important in Puerto Rican culture, and this is evident in the daily lives of the Puerto Rican people. Many attend church on a weekly basis and are considered to be active believers. One specific religious festival that is important in Puerto Rican culture is El Día de los Tres Reyes Magos, or Three Kings Day. It is held on January 6th every year, and it marks the date when Puerto Rican children receive their gifts, rather than on Christmas Day. This is more historically accurate than receiving gifts on Christmas Day, because it marks when the three wise men brought gifts to baby Jesus. The three kings are named El Rey Melchor, El Rey Balthazar, and El Rey Gaspar. Traditions surrounding this holiday include putting a Tres Reyes statue on the dining room table to remind children that even though Christmas is over, they should strive to remain on their best behavior. Another tradition that is specific to Puerto Rico includes having children put a box full of grass under their beds on the eve of January 6th. This is so the camel that the Tres Reyes arrive on have something to eat. This holiday is a big part of Puerto Rican culture and demonstrates that a majority of the population abides by traditional Christian practices. Puerto Rico is an excellent gateway for drugs destined for East Coast U.S. cities, as it is centrally located between the continental United States and the northern region of South America. Due to a blend of a poor economy, geography, and constant tourism, Puerto Rico is growing to become one of the largest drug trafficking nations in the Caribbean. Since Puerto Rico takes on the role of a state, it abides by the same laws and customs of the continental region. The smuggling process is expedited here, as goods that flow through Puerto Rico are not required to clear customs. Drugs have an excellent chance of arriving here undetected, which contributes to the growing drug problem and the rising rate of drug addiction among the citizenry. The flow of narcotics has reached a record high, and the smuggling is exponentially increasing through the Puerto Rican region. Puerto Rico has over 700 miles of rough terrain that provides easy hideouts for the small but rapidly growing Puerto Rican cartels. Tourism and the floundering economy also contribute. Tourists can easily aid in the exchange of drugs while traveling abroad, and most security personnel focus their attention on keeping tourists safe, rather than expending their efforts on patrolling the coastline for drug runners. Another significant problem is that aiding to the spread of drug trafficking is the poor infrastructure and the evidence of corruption in the Puerto Rican government. Many members of the police force as well as city officials are aware of this growing problem and turn their cheek in order to allow Puerto Ricans to receive any source of income feasible in these desperate times, or are even involved in the trafficking themselves. Recently, the U.S. Department of Justice incarcerated 16 Puerto Rican police officers for their use of government resources to further the spread of this illicit trade. As I reflect on what it means to be a Puerto Rican national, I must also reflect on the intersectionality that is presented in identifying as both a Latin American, a subject of the U.S., and a Caribbean citizen. The Puerto Rican identity is both complex and diverse, and has survived centuries of oppression and subjection to U.S. ideals and customs. Puerto Rico quickly stemmed a culture that has become extremely nationalistic in order to voice their pride for their people and their resilience to foreign intervention. My case study has provided me with a wealth of knowledge about the Puerto Rican nation and, more importantly, It has provided me with a new, fresh perspective on Latin American affairs and how the U.S. has flexed its power in the region. I have always grown up in a fairly traditional household and have attended schools that provided interventionist perspectives from the Asian and European continents, but have swept over Latin America, voiding me of familiarity with the region. I now feel confident in saying that I have a general understanding of Latin America, as well as how exploitation and outsourcing have left a lasting impact politically, socially, and economically. Livelihoods have been uprooted as a consequence of the establishment of large U.S. corporations overseas, and numerous nations have been victims of government overthrows, devastating the natural order of progression and development. Although my case study is purely a commonwealth and not a sovereign nation, it still draws many parallels to the themes explored in both Hillman's Understanding Latin America and Livingstone's America's Backyard, the United States and Latin America from the Monroe Doctrine to the War on Terror, in relation to the presence of the military of the island, gender and labor disparities, and the rise of neoliberalism. In terms of gender disparities, Puerto Rico has promoted separate gender spheres in terms of work. Women are expected to work in service industries and are responsible for the home. Many young women don't even graduate high school, continuing the systemic oppression. Neoliberalism is highly applicable to Puerto Rico and is forced to abide by U.S.'s economic policies and houses offshore government accounts and companies. Overall, I learned the most about Puerto Rico's dependency on the United States due to reasons outside of their control. Although many states favor statehood, Puerto Rican policies are interwoven into the U.S.'s, and in order to gain sovereignty, they must be able to stabilize their own economy and develop government agencies that can provide valuable goods and services to its people. In context of Latin America and the rest of the world, I believe that the future of Puerto Rico includes becoming its own country, but due to its poor state now, this will not occur for many years to come. Puerto Rico is a nation built off of resilience, and it will rise to become a more prosperous island once it is out of the U.S.'s steel grip.
From a sociological reason, we are Puerto Ricans that are American citizens. We are not American citizens that born in Puerto Rico. We are Puerto Ricans that have the American citizens. And we fight for that in the world.